Welcome to Women in la Frontera. On this podcast, I am joined by Sister Norma Pimentel, a missionary of Jesus and Executive Director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley. And Sister, it's always a joy to sit and talk to you. And we could go on and on about all the ways that you have been recognized from one of Time's 100 people, most influential people in the world, to being sought out by Pope Francis and recognized for the work that you do here on the border. I know recently he even sent you a video and a letter thanking you for the work and animando que sigas adelante.
Sí, gracias, Brenda. It's so good to be here with you and to the many listeners that are out there listening to us. And really, truly, for me, it's amazing privilege to be honored by Pope Francis, and to be recognized. For me, the most important thing, more than anything, is the opportunity to be myself, to serve God to the plenitude that He needs me and wants me, and I can be able to do it. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to do what I can do to serve Him, especially in the most vulnerable and most needed people in our communities. There's a part of me that kind of you mentioned in our prayer right now about that God ignites us. Ese prendernos fuego por dentro, it's something that signifies a lot to me, because I think that what happens to me, the fact that God has ignited in me the desire to just really reach out to be present to those that I need to be there for, in a very special way, helping them recognize God's presence in them and the beautiful person that they are, because God created us amazingly beautiful, all of us.
Well, I will say that having followed you all these years and the work that you do and are allowing me to be, a little witness to all of this that you're doing has been inspiration. I mean, you are an inspiration to so many, and you help us to better respond to God's call.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. I appreciate your presence in my life, because we are journeying together in this caminar juntas para realmente descubrir esa presencia de Dios y nos entusiasma. Yo me entusiasmo mucho cuando estoy contigo, el tiempo que platicamos y las cosas que soñamos de hacer, siempre pensando, a ver, qué bonito sería si hiciéramos así, como a las dos nos gusta el arte, in our own special way. We love art a lot, in certain ways. I like to paint and draw, and now I want to do the ceramics, and you're excited about that too, and you do the quilting, and you do a lot of beautiful things, and now you started to do some painting. There's a connectedness there that I really love about us, that we can come together and share the gifts that God puts in us, especially to dream. If anything, we dream a lot,
Right.
And that's so beautiful. I love the fact that we can dream about so many things that we can do, and we can get inspired to really try to kind of bring together that presence of God in us in special ways,
Because He gives us so many different gifts. Mm-hmm. And part of, as I mentioned, spending time with you and witnessing constantly how every day you say yes to the Lord. I listened to one of your talks recently, and you were talking about how you go to sleep exhausted, but you wake up the next day. I mean, you offer up that day to the Lord, and you wake up ready to go again. Tell me a little bit about that daily yes.
It's true that sometimes I do go exhausted, and it catches up to me. I recently told somebody, I need my weekend and somehow to create that space so that I can kind of recollect myself in a way that I can start another week, and have that in between space for prayer, for rest, for disconnect of other things, And otherwise I feel like a run-on sentence, And so I think it's important to have that personal time, but at the same time, when we do have the time to be there for others and to move forward to say yes, every day. To the moment you open up, especially me, I open my eyes, and the very first thing that comes to mind is God. Gracias, Señor, por este día que me regalas. And right from there, I kick off the morning and the day, and it's with that, thank you, God, for today, And and just let things happen as they need to, and it can be exhausting because it's one thing after another, and Joanne, she's the one that takes care of my calendar and takes care of make sure that I'm there where I need to be when those commitments that I make, and sometimes she overpopulates my calendar with one thing and another, and says, just give me time to get from one space to another space, kind of change hats, and okay, I'm doing this, and so, but it's all good. I feel that, and some people ask me, so aren't you tired? I say, yes, I sometimes end up tired, but my tiredness no se compara con el sufrimiento y el dolor que veo. The suffering and the pain that I see in some people that I encounter is my pain is nothing, And so I'm glad that I can do it, As many times as I need to go to Reynosa or Matamoros, because I know going is going to resolve something or help somebody see something. I feel that if I can be an instrument to guide people to see what God wants them to see, I'll do it as many times as I need to,
Right. And what some listeners may not realize is that you have been helping here along the border with el acompañamiento, the welcoming of the stranger, for years. More recent, started in 2014?
Yes.
But even before then,
I was already doing it. When I entered religious life, it was my introduction to being with the immigrants, the refugees, because the community that I joined, the Missionaries of Jesus, the sisters were already receiving the moms and the children, the babies that Border Patrol could not have because they didn't have a detention facility for a mother and a child. And so they would always call the sister, Sister Juliana, can we take you this mother and this child? And she would, of course, said yes all the time. And so that's what I entered. I was initiated to helping the most needed in our community, which were the immigrants, at the time. Was because they were part of our community. They were part of when we sat down to eat, and to spend the day and with a child or a mother that was always there with us a couple of days while sister arranged how to have them get to where they were going to their families. And so, yes, and Casa Romero was back then a shelter for refugees that Bishop John Fitzpatrick, which at the time, asked the sisters if we could oversee that shelter, so we could just take care of the families. They don't get politically involved. He didn't want us to do that, but we received thousands and thousands of families every single day. They were arriving from those war-torn countries in El Salvador, Nicaragua. Things were terrible back then, and it looks like they continue to be bad still today. So back then I was just entered religious life. I was very young, and so Sister Juliana was the one that guided me to. She was my mentor. She showed me how to be present, how to be there for those that need us, and how to speak on behalf of them so that they could rightfully get what is needed for them, be treated with dignity and respect, be considered as because they didn't know how to talk. I remember she would go speak to the head of the board of the detention facility, and she says, I need you to, there is somebody that you can help me because he's been in there forever, and I think that he needs to be released because he won't be any problems to the community in any way. And I want you to look at his case. So she was the best attorney. Without being an attorney herself, she was actually to speak on behalf of this old man that was in detention for years, for no other crime other than entering the country because of the fact that he wanted to be safe from those that were out to hurt him, And so they released him to her own recongresses. In other words, under her care, he can go. And so it was amazing the work she did, and through that guidance I saw that we could make a difference in the lives of many. All we have to do is believe in ourselves, believe that God is the one leading us and helping us to say yes, and to move forward, not hold back, I always tell kids when I go speak at universities, don't hold back from doing good. Always try to do as much as you can, Like our Holy Father said once, vete a la cama cansado de hacer el bien, go to bed tired of doing good.
Right. And you do that every single day. I don't think people realize, if they were to shadow you, how you are from one end of the valley to even from across the border in one, Matamoros in the morning and Reynosa in the afternoon. And I particularly love the way that the children come to you.
I love children, it's so beautiful. They give me life. The fact that children are the innocence of our society, and we must protect their environment so that they can be safe and they can be children. And so I think that's a mission that we all have, and trying to find ways to protect children and to make sure they're safe and to create the space for them to be kids, to laugh and have fun and play. And for me to be able to do that, it's something that I always want to have the opportunity, especially when I hear a child cry. It's like I can be talking to you right now, and if I'm in the respite center and there's a child crying somewhere, I'll stop and say, let me go see what's wrong with this kid. Why is he crying so much? I remember one time there was a little girl crying. I didn't know who it was, and I went to look for her, and her dad had her in his arms, and she was crying because she had this toy that had little balls that you press and the ball will jump up, and they looked like gumballs. They were red, blue, red, yellow, orange. And she thought they were gum,
Oh, no.
And so the dad said she wants gum, And I said, oh, quiere chicle. Ahorita te traigo chicle. And so I went and I asked everybody, does anybody have gum? So I brought her back a piece of gum, aquí está tu chicle, She was my best friend from then on. She followed me everywhere. She was so happy. I gave her the gum she was looking for. So simple. Children will be happy with so little,
Right. And I think that's that example of saying yes to accompanying another, el acompañamiento.
Sí.
And that could take different shapes and forms, like you said, from handling some of the legal cases and situations, to comforting a child who's crying.
Yes. Sometimes we don't realize how important it is accompanying somebody else. Today we miss out a lot on opportunities to accompany somebody that really needs us. Our youth today sometimes are all alone. After this pandemic, I think a lot of kids that missed out of school, their lives was turned upside down. And many of them are very depressed. And yet they're there with you, but at the same time, they're alone. And so I think that we must accompany, especially those that really need us to be by their side, and sometimes we don't need anything else but our love, our care for them, and being present. And sometimes that's the one thing that we don't know how to do, just be present, It's so important to just be. I tell people that go to be with the immigrants, I said, all you have to do is be present. You don't have to worry about anything. Just be present. That's all they need from you.
Absolutely. And it's not just in being present to the immigrants or welcoming the stranger, it's in our own homes.
Yes, definitely. Like I said, it has to be with everybody, learning to be present to each other. Sometimes we're so busy in our minds, and when we're hearing somebody, we're already thinking about what I'm going to say to them, or no, just listen, just be present and try to be there for the person that is opening up and sharing with you what's going on in their life at that moment, And sometimes we don't really listen. We just are so fixated on our own little world that we fail to be present to the others.
Absolutely. You said something earlier that really made me think, because we live in a world that's always in a rush and we're always going, you mentioned that you need time, we all need time for a little bit of quiet and prayer so that we can better listen to the Lord.
Yes.
So that we can be present and
right.
better accompany
That's
another.
true. Sometimes if we don't make that time to ourselves to be quiet, to be present to God, for God to be present to us, basically it's allowing God to be present to us, because sometimes we're so busy and so caught up with our own stuff that we leave him out, and kind of slowing down and creating those spaces of time, and whether it's early in the morning or late in the evening, on weekends. But really, it really helps if you take one day out of your week to just dedicate it to God. it really reconnects you and puts you, kind of grounds you in his presence, so that when you go out. And I remember when I was in Casa Romero, and this would always happen to me, because he was working at the house. We were living there 24/7. That means all the time. And so we would wake up very early in the morning and start with morning prayer, where we convene everybody that was at the house, and we would pray and sing. And then we would assign chores, so that who was going to be in charge of the kitchen, who was going to choose the bedrooms and the outside in the garden, whatever. And everybody got an assignment. And the day went on and things would happen. I noticed in myself that when I didn't take one day just to sort of like a day of retreat, a day to be with God, just so that I can kind of be in his presence and pray, and kind of like allow myself not to focus any problems or any things I needed to do, just be. And when I did that, when I came back to the house, I didn't see problems. I saw opportunities to come up with solutions, I didn't feel drawn down, but rather everything seemed to come out natural as to how to resolve and how to respond to things that surface during the day, And so instead of tired, I ended up just
renewed.
Yes, life just became easier, and problems did not become so big that I was overwhelmed. Like, rather, there were opportunities for me to resolve or come up with solutions, And so I think the special time of prayer, special time of quiet, special time of just yourself and God is very important, And also, I think that for me, and I think for most of us, we can find nourishment in the Eucharist, If we could receive the Eucharist daily, especially if you can do it right before you go to work and start the day, that's the best nourishment, the best way to start your day, so we know exactly what God wants of us for the day, So I think that if we have a chance to do that, it's the best thing to do.
Yeah, I know you say often that you could not do what you do without the Lord and being in prayer.
It all comes from him, Honestly, if we don't recognize God's presence in everything we do, it's initiated by him. The fact that I want to go to Mass comes from him, The fact that I want to do something good comes from God. It's all inspired by him in us to do good, to do something that brings us closer to him and closer to others, And I think it just comes from God. So we have to see that presence of God in us so that we don't lose sight of it,
Absolutely. Well, I mean, there's always so much to cover when we sit down and talk, and that whole component of el acompañamiento, about spending time in prayer with the Lord. Let's backtrack a little bit about how you first said yes to God and came to religious life.
Well, interestingly, if anybody has heard my story, I've shared this so many times, and I laugh about it because honestly, I think that I was very disconnected from God. Initially, as I was growing up, God for me was a God that was an enforcer. You behave or I'll punish you. This kind of God. That's how my parents introduced me to God. A God that was, no te portas bien, Norma, te va a castigar Dios. And so I always feared God. I always felt, did I do something wrong? Is he going to punish me or something, And so there was not that closeness that I felt to God up until he introduced himself to me, which was what really changed everything for me 100%. Almost 180 degrees. I all of a sudden just like, whoa, I felt immersed in his presence, and he just, I just didn't ever had enough. I wanted to read the Bible. I wanted to go to church. It's like, all these years, and it was after I graduated from college, and I ended up going to this prayer group just by chiripa, because I didn't want to go there, honestly. But my friend was going to go there, and so after this prayer group, we were going to Pizza Hut, and that's what really attracted me, But God had other plans for me, obviously, and so if this is the only way I'm going to get her, I'll give her the pizza, And so I ended up going to a prayer group. It was there that I experienced his presence in the most amazing way that I mean, he really lifted me up. And I was in awe, totally, and from that moment forward, it was just, this is why I'm here right now today, It's amazing, he made sure that he made his grand entrance,
Yes. Yeah. And wonderful that Sister Juliana has been a mentor up until her passing, when she rested in peace.
Even to the last moment she was, and so, right, I was fortunate to have somebody like her that actually was an amazing mentor and helped me discover me, and to allow God's presence to be the one that guided me to know who Norma is, and she helped me. She gave me the assurance and the trust that I needed to believe that the most important thing in my life is Jesus, and even her last words were that, she had me kneel down on one of her last days, and she said, Norma, que Jesús sea siempre la respuesta de todo lo que tú buscas, y lo encuentres a él. It's only that matters, And she said once, when I was going to St. Mary's in San Antonio to get my master's in theology, she said, todo es paja, Norma. Todo es paja. Nada importa. Solamente él.
Well, how beautiful that she was able to mentor you all these years. And now you are a mentor to so many in your talks across the country and even in your witness daily. And since we need mentors in our lives to help us say yes to God's call and to discern that.
Yes, I think that I was blessed to have her, and I think that God will always put somebody in our journey to be able to walk with us and to guide us as Sister Juliana was for me. I feel that we all must listen to who's walking with us, that is by our side, that is also helping us journey toward God.
And it's not always an easy walk.
No, of course not. It's sometimes, that's why we need good mentors or good companions that will walk with us.
Because I know you mentioned before earlier in the day that many young people come to you and ask you for advice on how to discern their vocation.
Yes, I find that to be a privilege, and especially now today in society, how the youth, the young men and women are searching, and where is God in my life? What does He want of me? I think those are amazing questions that we can ask ourselves, and especially when you're young and when you're at a crossroad and you're finishing college and what's next, And so just say yes. Don't hold back. Say yes to Him. Say yes to God in your life, and He will mark the way. He will show you. He will just, don't be afraid or making the right decision. If you are, well, you can always change your mind, But move forward and live life to the fullest. Love others, and be willing to discover God's presence in everything.
Right. And trusting in Him always. I love the story that you share, because sometimes in our culture we think that there's scarcity and we have to count, the little that we have, and you run into that at the respite center because you have the thousands of people that you care for. Tell us about how the Lord provides.
Yes.
With the thousands that you care for.
When we, of course, you know that the respite center, which is the shelter that we have, was the center where we received thousands and thousands and thousands of people since 2014 that we've received continuously, and it's like, well, there's never enough. It's like there has been times when we've had almost 2,000 people. And it's a lot of people. And it's like
in one day,
in one single day, and so it's like, do I have 2,000 toothpaste, toothbrushes, underwear, socks, T-shirts? I mean, you name it. There's never enough, because it's just one day. So there's never enough. And so volunteers and staff that are there at the center are always rationing, well, let's see if we have enough of Pampers for this mom. We'll just limit it to 3, maybe 4 Pampers per mom, and so we can at least have enough for every single mother that's going to arrive, and so what do you do when a mother comes back and says, mi hijo ya usó los 3 que me dio, necesito más? And the volunteer says, well, we already gave him some, sister. But she needs them. So go ahead and give. Don't ration her. Just give the mother.
The baby will do what the baby
needs to do. If she needs the pamper, you give her the pamper, okay? And we run out, pues we run out, yeah? Basically, I said, come on, the mom needs it, give her the pamper, And so stop limiting, don't rationalize. Would you believe that after that, we never ran out of Pampers? We have not run out of Pampers. And so, truly, when we try to ration the grace of God, His blessing, we limit ourselves when we can do so much. And I always believe that sometimes we say, oh, enough is enough, How many are we going to help? There's so many coming, let's put a limit,
I know you get that question often, don't you?
Why should we put a limit, It's not up to us, it's up to God, If He wants to ration it, let Him be the one that decides, not us, I think we have to open our hearts and love. That is what we're called to do, And if we run out, we run out, But in the meantime, it is our job to receive and welcome any human being that is in distress, that's hurting, that's suffering, any mother that needs you to give him some Pampers, what is she going to do to her little baby that is hurting and that needs milk and that he doesn't have anything to feed her, the baby? There's something we can do,
And it's so unfortunate, and you see this daily, that there are some who remain blind or have closed their hearts off.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we let ourselves be confused and close our heart and we're blind, as you say, mostly because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of others with self-interest of trying to misguide us to believe something that is not true or keep us from actually experiencing the blessings of God through us because and guide us in the wrong direction, And so I think that's why we're blind sometimes and we refuse to see, We fail to see more than anything the true calling that we have to love others, to welcome the stranger, to be there for them the way God wants us to be, I feel that I always say that we're hijacked by others and not letting us really live out our faith.
Right. And I know that you often say there's an open invitation for people to come and see for themselves.
I believe that. When I remember when we started in the Respite Center back in 2014 at Sacred Heart, and so many families were coming with their children to help, it was so beautiful to see kids helping other kids and asking them, do you like this shirt or this one? It was so beautiful to see that exchange. And then the mother to say, okay, mijo, vámonos ya, because tomorrow, no, Mom, I can't go until my friend gets on the bus, It was so beautiful to see that connectedness between two kids, And I remember one time somebody said, Sister, why are you letting kids come here and volunteer? They shouldn't, they're too young. I said, no, nobody's too young to show the love of God, I think we all need to come no matter what our age is. And so, yes, as long as they come with their parents or somebody that's going to be with them, they can come as young as they want, And we've had very young and very old. I've had winter Texans that come there in their 90s and they come to volunteer, and it's so beautiful. And I sometimes have to send them home and say, go rest. You've been here all day.
Because they want to stay.
They say, but sister, these mothers, they still need us to hand out the things that they need, like milk or whatever. Who's going to do it? Don't worry about it. You go rest and tomorrow you come. It's so beautiful to see that dedication, because obviously they've been touched by the love of God, and they know that their presence is making a difference in somebody's life, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that volunteering, in a sense, or helping another is really a gift to those of us who show up and give of ourselves. It's there's been so many transformations, and I know that when you walk into that respite center and you start helping, it is hard to walk away because like you mentioned, you see you are making a difference to that person in front of you.
Yeah, it does. It changes you, and you know that your life has meaning, you know? Your time, it's not like sitting in the TV and watching a TV show after TV show. And honestly, you when you are at the respect center, you it's like watching a lot of TV shows, but you're doing something amazing, you know? You're making a difference in somebody's life. You actually help comb the hair of this little girl, or help a mother with something that she needed, you know, simple things that you are able to accomplish and give to somebody and make somebody happy and somebody feel good, you know? And you live with this sense of accomplishment that you've done something amazingly good.
On that note, I don't know how to follow that because of all the good that's happening. It's because you're inspiring that, and you have an open invitation for people
To the respite, and to not just the respite, not to just immigrants, it's anyone in our lives. Because one of the things that I see a lot, Brenda, is in our communities we have people that are homeless, you know, and I'm really moved by the fact that they're there in the street sometimes sitting down on the side or laying down, you know, and we pass by and people pass, go and come and whatever, and it's almost as we don't notice them, you know. They're people and they're abandoned. They're just like rejected, left out, you know, and I think that we need to notice them, you know, that we need to reach out to them, and we have to see what can we do to make a difference in the life, at least of one person, find out who they are and why they're there. What is it that they you can give them that they need, you know, and I think it's important that we stop being indifferent, you know. I remember one time I read this, or I saw this somewhere, where that somebody said that there was a homeless in the street, and people were in this big city were coming and going to work, and the homeless had a sign, you know how they use a cardboard sign, and he had signs, "I'm blind, can you help me?" You know, "I'm blind," you know. And everybody would pass and didn't even bother to give him money, you know. This girl passed and saw the sign, picked it up, wrote something in it, and put the sign back. And then after that, the homeless noticed that everybody would stop and give him money. And when the girl came out of work, obviously she came past back through there. She stopped there, and the man, the homeless, said, "You were the one that picked my sign up and wrote something in it. What did you write?" And she said, "It's a beautiful day and I cannot see it." And that's all she did. She wrote that in the back. And after that, people actually became aware of this man and something beautiful was missing, you know, life. And so it made a difference in our hearts. I think we need to notice that. The people we run into in our life. What is it that we need to do to make that beautiful day for them?
Well, thank you so much, Sister, for reminding us to open our eyes, our hearts, and take action and spend time with Lord, so that we can, because He's the one who opens our eyes.
Can you imagine if all of us did that? This world would be different, you know? This world would be amazing, you know? We would do what we need to do, but we have a lot of work to do.
Well, thank you for pushing us forward and encouraging us and giving us ánimo. So before we close, Sister Norma, do you have a Frontera tip to share?
I would definitely say go find something that you can help someone else without that person being capable of paying you back, you know. Someone that will receive it and thank you for it, or not thank you for it, simply because you see that they can help and you give it freely and generously,
Expecting nothing in return.
Expecting nothing in return. I think that's something you can do. I think it's very good that we let go of something without expecting nothing in return. Whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody you run into the street, or somebody, or in a place that you can go volunteer, where do something for somebody that is extraordinary and that cannot pay you back in any way, not even in a thank you. I mean, they do, that's good, but don't expect nothing back. It's give, just give. Mm-hmm. And if you want to read something, it's that book that I read when I entered religious life that I loved, La Familia que Alcanzó a Cristo. If you have a chance to look it up and find it, I strongly recommend that you read it. It's a book that helps you fall in love with God, just like St. Bernard did.
Well, my Frontera tip is the book I had mentioned to you by Henry Newen, Out of Solitude, 3 Meditations on the Christian Life. And he speaks about that need to go and spend some time in solitude and quiet so that we can better serve the Lord.
That's amazing. I believe that. It has worked for me. I truly discovered that when I was in Casa Romero, when I was starting out in the convent. And the day that I would come back after a day of just quiet and personal time with God, I was a better person. Life was more easy.
It renews us to start all over again.
Life is so good, so easy to do. It's like, otherwise it's stressful and exhausting. Mm-hmm. We need that. We need that space.
He gives us the direction and the animal.
There's the calmness, that presence of His presence that continues on with us. In the middle of the storm, we stay calm.
Well, Sister Norma, thank you so much, and thank you for agreeing to be a future co-host on Women in La Frontera, because I know that there's lots of women that you want to invite and have conversations.
I definitely invite everyone. I think that we must come together, to promote us, to help us, to encourage us, to definitely, it's amazing. I'm so happy that I'm co-hosting this with you, because it's a great time to spend time together, us women, in promoting the goodness that God has created in us.
Amen. Thank you again. And thank you for joining us today in Women in La Frontera. Until next time, let's go and use the gifts God has given us to set the world on fire with God's love and grace.
Amen.